Welcome to Something to Say, where we bring voices from diverse backgrounds who will share their unique stories and perspectives on finding their passion and provide insights on how you can find yours. Join us as host Greg DeSouza guides us through this enlightening journey.
Welcome to Something to Say podcast, a unique platform that amplifies the voices of individuals from various backgrounds sharing their passion. I'm your host, Greg DeSouza, and I'm pleased to bring you another episode. Thank you for joining us today. We welcome Clay DeSouza. As a political consultant and professional, he acts as a public relations specialist, salesperson, and manager. By using many forms of marketing suitable media, including advertising, press releases, coordinating interviews, and developing and producing direct mail, his general goal is to make voters aware of a candidate's cause or an organization and their general platform. As an integrated strategist and marketing professional, he works with companies, causes, and candidates to change people's mind and move them to action. He develops and executes campaigns that helps his clients, candidates, constituents, and stakeholders achieve bigger and better results than they'd even hoped for. His roots are in grassroots politics, working on the election and re-election of President Barack Obama and Joe Biden. He has contributed valuable lessons for unprecedented campaigns to understand, reach, and mobilize millions of voters all throughout the country, and it has been rewarding. He is skilled at creating and using new data-driven tools and technology that reach the right audience with the right message and then turn them out to vote. His diverse background includes being a colleague with senior strategists and top communicators from the White House and Capitol Hill. Welcome, Clay. Welcome, Clay. It is so exciting to have you join us today and speak to us about all that you have done. Been very excited to get into a conversation that will allow for me to take a deeper dive in things like public relations and political campaigns and all things podcasting. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm truly excited to have this conversation with you today.
So I know that you're a really busy person. I mean, you've got a number of things that you are coordinating under your umbrella, and we're always excited to learn about the nuances of it, which we will as we go further into our conversation today. But here it's Something to Say. We like to begin with just some icebreaker questions so our guests get to know you a little bit better. So if you're up for it, we'll ask the icebreaker and then we'll dive into a little bit.
For sure.
All right, I do have to take one moment and say, I love that relaxing poolside view behind you. I mean, it's so cold everywhere on the East Coast. I think we all would love to have a poolside view right now.
Yeah, that's exactly why I have it up, just doing those type of memories or those imaginations, for sure.
So it's interesting. Over, I'm going to say the last week or two, I've saw some of your incredible baby pictures. Happy birthday, I think is probably overdue. But it really kind of fits nicely in our first icebreaker question. So what is your favorite childhood memory?
For sure, Greg. Well, my favorite childhood memory has to be summer road trips my family took every year. We would just pack up the car and drive somewhere, going new places and such along the way. That's certainly something I still try to carry out these days, even though it's for a different purpose, because I'm traveling a lot for conferences, events, and networking, other business projects and such. One trip in particular stands out. We visited a small town where local festival was happening. The sense of community, the vibrant culture, and the way everybody came together left a lasting impression on me. It was then that I realized the power of connection and storytelling, which sparked my passion for bringing people together through shared experiences. I grew up going to North Carolina practically every summer to visit my grandparents, my cousins, and aunts, and such. So that always is, and from New Jersey, actually, where you actually kind of are at this moment in time, as you told me. So we would just take that 8 and 9 hour drive down south and stay for about a weekend or a week during the summer. it would be a whole lot of fun. But another trip that stands out for me is 30 years ago, my family, my mother, father, and my brother, we drove down in a 1993 black Jeep Grand Cherokee down to Orlando, Florida, the Disney World, from New Jersey, as a matter of fact. And that just left a lasting impression on me. And it really just sparked my love for road trips. To this day, I probably do more road trips than being on an airplane, to be transparent and such, even though I fly quite a bit as well. But I just like to go through different states, and probably not as much these days because of the political and social climate out there and just not knowing where exactly you are. So I try to not do too many small towns passing through as much as I used to or we used to and such. But it's something I still ideally like to enjoy, just kind of seeing new places and just capturing different cultural spots in between.
It's interesting you say that. I too had the opportunity to do a lot of family road trips. We used to drive from New Jersey down to Florida for many,
Mhm.
many, many years. And it's a very unique way to see the country. I think to your point, it's a very authentic way to kind of learn about each one of the communities that you drive through. And like you said, from a storytelling perspective, it's a great way to get good content. I also thought it was interesting, though, as you had talked about that favorite experience or that favorite childhood memory. Like whenever we ask that question, it always carries over to what people do today. So those great childhood experiences seem to have a way of not just being memorable for you then, but still serves as a real valuable part of who you are as a person today. So I thank you for sharing that. So
Sure. Thank you.
to go a little bit further, and I know for some, this is probably one of the questions that, well, they don't want to answer it, but they know they probably can answer it. So, what was your biggest failure, and what did you really learn from that experience?
Well, Greg, one of my biggest failures was early in my career when I underestimated the importance of listening. I was working on a campaign and was so eager to implement my ideas that I didn't fully consider the perspectives of the team and the community we were serving. The campaign didn't resonate as we had hoped. And from that experience, I learned that the true leadership isn't about imposing your vision, but about collaborating and valuing every voice. It taught me humility and the critical importance of empathy and effective communication.
Well, those type of experiences, especially as we get older and more mature, they play in such a different way. I mean, it's great that you have that experience early on in your life and you can take that and adapt it in terms of your communication style, your leadership style, and well, certainly within the world of what you do, I'm sure that ability to kind of listen and draw that information as accurately as possible makes a huge difference. We do have a really popular question, so I'm really glad to be able to ask you this. Every time we get the opportunity to ask it, I'm always curious to see what the response is. So for you, the question is, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would that be and why?
Yeah, if dinner with any historical figure, it would be Nelson Mandela. His resilience, leadership, and dedication to unity in the face of immense adversity are profoundly inspiring. And I loved to hear firsthand about his journey, how he maintained hope during difficult times, and any insights on reconciliation and forgiveness. His ability to bring people together and his commitment to justice are lessons that are quite timeless and incredibly relevant today.
It's interesting you say that, and cite him in particular. We've had maybe five other individuals. Most really talk about his tenacity and his desire to really, stay very focused on an objective and the value that he wants to bring to society and what that means to them. Great response. Congratulations. So let's learn a little bit more about you, because, like I said, when I saw your baby pictures online, I know that there's a connectivity of who I am as a person to who I was as a child. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about your personal journey? How did you kind of aspire to be the person you are today?
Definitely, Greg. I appreciate you sharing that and asking that question. My journey has been an exciting blend of exploration and purpose, growing up in an environment rich in diversity, such as New Jersey, central New Jersey, Princeton, New Jersey, to be exact. I was always fascinated by how many different narratives shape our world. I eventually ultimately pursued degrees in business, sociology and political science, and even just careers in the areas of communication. And that was driven by a desire to understand the mechanisms of influence and societal change. So my career began in grassroots politics, where I cut my teeth on the fundamentals of organizing and mobilization. So working on President Obama's campaigns in 08 and 12 as a mainstay focus was really transformative. And it taught me the power of whole collective action and the impact of people reaching people, excuse me, on a personal level. From there, I founded DeSouza Strategies. It was formerly DeSouza Marketing. And DeSouza Strategies aims to bridge the gap between organizations and the communities that they serve. So my focus has always been on crafting strategies that are not just about messaging, but about meaningful engagement. And it's about changing minds and moving people to action in a way that is authentic and lasting. So throughout my journey, I've been real fortunate to collaborate with incredible minds across industries, learning and adapting along the way. It's been a path of continuous growth, and I'm excited for what the future holds.
It's interesting as you talk about the development of your company, and I want to dive a lot more deeper into that because I'm sure this evolution of strategy and engaging with individuals has become even that much more complex as we look at all the different communication channels that people are influenced by the information that they get and how your strategy really plugs into that. So thanks for sharing your journey. I want to come back to that in a little bit more of a granular perspective when we talk about specifically the work that you do. But I do like to find out more about the idea of an inner circle. So just how big is your inner circle?
Yeah, my inner circle is fairly tight knit. I believe in surrounding myself with people who challenge me, inspire me, and keep me grounded. So it's a mix of close family, a handful of lifelong friends, acquaintances, and such, and just those individuals who've guided me professionally and personally. These relationships are built on trust and mutual respect, and they play a crucial role in my life.
And so often we ask that question, people love that idea of that inner circle, and it is relatively small because they appreciate the fact that they're going to be the ones who are going to tell them you're doing a great job, or you know what, you are way off base. So I appreciate the way that you shared that, which is kind of an interesting segue to the next question about who has really been the most influential person in your life?
That's a tough one because I've been influenced by many remarkable individuals, but I'd say my mother has had the most profound impact. She taught me the value of integrity, hard work, perseverance. Just watching her navigate life's challenges with grace and determination instilled in me strong work ethic and just the resilience to survive and ultimately have the foundation, a spiritual foundation, and even this a spirit of thriving
Hmm.
ultimately, and just learning how to work smart and instead of working hard. So when I say strong work ethic, I also will really more so mean working smart as opposed to working hard and meaningless efforts. And it's really a belief in the importance of giving back because she has instilled in that to me since I was a kid and all, along with my grandparents as well. And I certainly will note my father for also giving me a spirit of drive and determination, just thinking outside of the box and not letting anybody put you in a box and such. And that's still a constant struggle for me because oftentimes I do get put in the box and such because people think I should be doing one thing or they think of me one way or another and all that. But I always just try to prove that I'm just as good as you are. You're not better than me, and I'm not better than you at the end of the day, because we're all God's children. So I really work from those principles. And there's nothing too big for me. I believe I'm qualified for any position, for any task out there, as long as I put my mind to it and put in the efforts and such. But yeah,
Wow.
every wisdom and guidance I've gotten from the aforementioned individuals
Yeah.
have been a constant source of strength for me.
Wow. Very cool. Hey, it's interesting as you kind of, cited the influence that your mother had. There was a phrase that my mother used to always use with me, which even though she's passed, I still hold it very close to my heart. So she said, never forget who you are and whose you are, which made a strong connection as to, not, although I know who I am as a person, I also have to know like how I became that person. So So I can appreciate how, as you kind of pointed that out, what that significance is and the way that you articulated it. I've talked about with you your biggest failure and how you kind of took that and use it as a way forward. But sometimes there are things that happen that unfortunately they're just out of your control. It's not necessarily a failure, but it happened to you. So this is kind of a two-parter question. What was the best year of your life? And then what was the worst year of your life?
It's interesting when I think about those. I think about those quite a lot, and you almost have to look at it like professional sports season. Like, how did this team perform in 2021 compared to 2022 and such? There's good and bads, and it's also measured on, like, let's just use football since that's a season we're concluding still. If the Kansas City Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl this season and three-peats, is that a failure? Or is it still a success that you made it to a certain point? And I kind of view life that way too. So I could easily just say like 2020 was one of the most challenging years, obviously for the whole world, the global pandemic, social unrest, and personal losses. It made it a year of hardship reflection for a lot of folks. But for me, it that was a year of prompted growth and a deeper understanding of resiliency communities when they came together. And financially, it was a great year. I mean, I wish it was under different circumstances, but 2020 was certainly a year that reinforced my commitment to making a positive impact through my work. I'll also say, and I'm probably answering this more than I should, but last year was certainly one where I could say it was equally good as it was crazy and bad. I could double-edged sword, traveled a whole lot, did a whole lot and such, but also at times it was a struggle for business and everything like that. But I do believe it provided a good springboard for what's to come now. This year, I could certainly say that probably in the more recent years, 2023 was very challenging, just personally, financially, and all and everything. Because really within the last couple of years, there's been ups and downs, projects that are greenlighted, projects that stalled or failed, or even having certain day jobs that come and go and such, having those and then getting fired multiple times from different roles and everything. That certainly did maybe question myself and my worth. But I know I go back to what I said in your previous question about having that resilience and working smart and continuing to have that drive from the individuals who inspire me and all that. My best, I would say, I always like to say really was anytime in the 90s or even more so early 2000s and
Wow.
all. And I say that because I was younger, but it was, I guess, innocence. Like I'm a huge 90s fan and fanatic. Like I love 90s fashion, I love 90s music, love 90s trends. What might be good or great for me might not have been for someone else. So I'm very cognizant of that as well. It might have been struggle for my parents, professionally, personally, and whatnot. But at least for me, it provided me the provision to feel like everything was good, even if I didn't have much. So that's how I look at things as well. It's very complex how I answered that, but that's how I kind of view life. Look at it from pros and cons from each year. Obviously, maybe some years have more pros and cons. I also look at it through the lens like a sports season. What were the goals? What were the expectations? My grandmother once said, "You can't be disappointed if you had no expectations to
That's
begin
right.
with." So that's also how I look at things too. So I apologize if that wasn't a direct answer, but I view things like those type of questions through a very differentiating and complex and diverse lenses for sure.
Yeah, and I think even as you've kind of described yourself, you are this multidimensional person. So questions like that, as you've kind of pointed out, would certainly resonate in a variety of different ways. I will say that there was another person that I had interviewed who also looked at it similar from a sport perspective when they were thinking about the worst year and what they actually wanted to accomplish, and the goal factor kind of came into that as well. But I did want to give you a big shout out about your reflection on the 90s. Part of it is because I've been binge watching Law and Order and I'm kind of stuck in the 90s right now. It was a very interesting period of time, which, to your point, I think a lot of the innocence that we all had from the 90s is something that kind of leaves you with a bit of a favorable impression of that period of time. So I think you did a great job in answering that question. So. But listen, I want to dive into more of the meatier discussion and then, of course, make some segue into some questions that we were fortunate to get from your team that we want to talk about that really resonates with you and your business. But I have three questions that are really kind of associated with this idea of public relations or podcasting and strategy and kind of getting your point of view. So, what are some of the most significant trends that you're currently seeing that are developing right now?
Right now, one of the most significant trends is the rise of digital storytelling through multimedia platforms. Podcasts in particular have become a powerful medium for reaching audiences in a more personal and engaging way. Additionally, there's a growing emphasis on authenticity and transparency in communication. People want real, meaningful interactions. In the political realm, we're seeing data analytics and micro targeting play a larger role in tailoring messages to specific audience. And of course, social media continues to be a double-edged sword, offering opportunities for engagement, but also posing challenges with misinformation. And of course, obviously, the news of TikTok that kind of proves my point even more. I believe we are now, so I'm going to answer this in another complex way. So we're at a point where I believe we have reached our peaks with a lot of our social media apps. We believe we're jumping the shark. If you don't know what jumping the shark means, it's a TV world reference that media execs use when the show is past its prime. If you probably heard of it, you probably have it, but you can certainly Google what the term jumping the shark means. It's when it becomes at that point you're past the prime or you're past the peak and you look silly or it's redundant and people are tuning out and the ratings numbers dwindle. But we're past Facebook's prime peak and we're past Instagram's prime peak. We're past obviously Twitter/X's peak, definitely. And TikTok, we're going to see what it is there. And LinkedIn has definitely entered a new frontier from how it was. LinkedIn has kind of taken on what Facebook was, and I'm only speaking from my own insightful analysis too that I do research on and observations with empirical data and such. And LinkedIn has become more social media engaged, like the legacy ones like Facebook and such, as opposed to just being a job searching tool like Indeed. Like Indeed, no one is putting posts out on Indeed. So you've seen that. And LinkedIn is going through a new frontier, I think will remain steady and will kind of outlive certain peaks that the other apps that I've referenced are right now, because people are going to always want to work on career advancement and jobs. That's not going anywhere. So and it's kind of proofed from the trends that, or any type of peak that Facebook or Instagram, Meta, or even TikTok or X have reached. Because let's be honest, social media more often than not is more of a leisure tool as opposed to a productive tool. So whenever you have a leisure tool that's used, whenever you have basically the fact of leisure tool that people do for better or for worse, like scrolling mindlessly 2 o'clock in the morning because they can't sleep, or they're bored at work, or they're procrastinating from what they need to do, at some point you're going to see those numbers crater. You're going to see those numbers fall off because people realize, shoot, I ain't being productive, right? Because people view it more as a leisure tool. It's kind of like the way where people used to intentionally sit down and watch TV. No one really sits down and watches TV in that proactive sense anymore. The term for that is appointment watching TV. Nobody just says, I'm going to go home and watch TV. Like, no one's intentionally doing that. It happens to be done in concert of what we're already doing. Let me put the TV on while I used to work, or let me have it on for some background noise. So it's used more in an informational content consumption tool. And pretty much that's how social media is going to kind of be. You either have people on it or you have people not that engaged at this point because we're kind of done it. And the generation that was impacted most by it, my generation, millennials, are kind of over it because we grew up with these apps. We kind of grew up together, and now it was at a point where we're growing old from it or growing out of it. I say all that to say is I think you're going to see more of a rise of more inner circle, as you kind of alluded to earlier with your question. You're going to see more inner circle connections again through group chats, group texts, message boards, communities. So you probably see more usage in Reddits, and LinkedIn is very good with groups. I think more better than Facebook. I mean, Facebook is just more kind of unofficially segmented towards an older, more or less informed, dare I say, demographic and such. So what I say that to say you have to diversify, especially if you have a business or brand or product, and just not reside in one app. Because we see what happens when an app goes down.
Right.
People don't know how to act. They act like an addict who doesn't have their fix.
Right.
And good. So you're kind of in a spot where you don't really know how to interact personally or professionally or in the realm of marketing, and you don't know how to really go beyond that. Luckily, I do, for better or for worse. I'm not certainly perfect at it because even I still fall in the traps of mindless scrolling, which I'm a lot better than I used to be, but I know how to harness it professionally and even just with marketing or communication duties and everything like that. So it's really just interesting to see, but I definitely think more encrypted apps like Signals, especially now with these apps, and I'm not really trying to go too political in this sense, but we've seen kind of right-wing content or right-wing ways or ideologies really kind of filtering out what we put on these mainstream apps, especially with a lot of disinformation basically being allowed back on a lot of these apps and allowing them to persist. You'll see people jumping into the Signal apps or more encrypted sites like Blue Sky or Fanbase and such, where even if you have to pay a premium, people will be kind of willing to do it if they're in a trusted network of folks. And I think people are also going to redefine the term friend again. We kind of have based our friendships and social circles around how many followers we have, or how many people we have liking our contents and such, for better or worse. So I say that to say that those are trends that we will continue to see and such. And obviously, with the rise of AI, that's certainly something that's obviously under significant trends and developments right now. And we've seen just rapidly over the last couple of years what that has done in shaping our landscape.
That's true.
But moreover, the focus on diversity, equity, inclusion has become central. Obviously, the new Trump administration has just signaled that all federal DEI employees are to be placed on immediate leave, just to paraphrase on that. And organizations are recognizing that embracing diverse voices isn't just ethical, it's essential for innovation and connecting with broader audiences, which obviously is sparking a lot of the backlash that we've seen in those particular areas. And it's not by mistake, it's by design.
Well, there's so much, as you've really pointed out, as it relates to the trends that are really affecting the public relations of podcasting communication space. And I think, as you said, that there is, a fair amount of misinformation that people have to sift through. But what would you say is a common misconception that's out there in the space that you'd like to clear up?
Misconception is that public relations is just about managing crises or spinning story. I mean, in reality, effective PR is about building genuine relationships and fostering trust over time. It's not about manipulating public perception, but about communicating values, listening to stakeholders, and engaging in meaningful dialogues. Another misconception is that political campaigns are solely driven by agendas disconnected from the public. On the contrary, successful campaigns are those that listen to the people, understand their needs, and work collaboratively towards common goals. Now, do these things get executed properly all the time? Definitely not. But in theory, this is how I definitely see them to be at their core, PR, public or political campaigns and such. And they do intertwine a lot, the two disciplines, for certain. So those are different kind of misconceptions I'd like to clear up now. And this war that we're in now, well, it's going to be seen how both of these actually go about, especially with mis or disinformation just kind of back on the rise again and all, and people only want to hear in confirmation bias or their own set of facts that they only want to believe.
Mm.
So
So it's
that's
that,
food.
double check, try and get that three source verification to at least have some sense of truth that's associated with it. I did want to also ask you though, because you referenced AI, and I wanted to get some of your thoughts about how that particular type of innovation has either created breakthroughs that are really exciting or is problematic. It has certainly become more embraced than perhaps 2 years ago in the use of AI, but as it relates to creating content, that becomes somewhat difficult because it only can give you what it has. So, just some quick thoughts that you have about the use of innovation or AI, especially in the world of content creation, whether it be for podcasting or public relations.
Particularly excited about the advancements in virtual reality or VR and augmented reality, AR, and storytelling engagement. These technologies have the potential to create immersive experience that can either educate, inform, entertain, and or inspire actions in ways traditional media cannot. For instance, using VR to stimulate environments affected by climate change can make the issue more tangible and urgent for audiences. It bridges the gap between awareness and empathy, moving and motivating people to get involved. Additionally, as I mentioned with AI-driven analytics are enhancing our ability to understand and predict audience behaviors, therefore allowing for more effective and responsible communication strategies.
Do you think, though, that consumers can tell the difference between human generated content and artificial intelligence created content, especially when it comes to how they make a decision?
I don't think everybody is quite yet. So I certainly am able to distinguish, but I can't assume that everybody else will be. But that's why it's important
Wow.
when you're able to, or if it's on your conscience, if you're putting stuff out there on social media or any online space, to designate that it's AI
Generated.
content. Now, I know a lot of people kind of feel a certain way about that, but I think in some cases it is important to make sure, even if it's just a little.
Mhm.
Now, the AI proponents, even like myself, would be like, well, I don't want you to think everything I'm doing is fake. And that's another misconception that we need to clear up. That's because it's AI generated or produced doesn't necessarily mean it's fake. It's
Fake.
also, on the contrary, can be, it's expanding your thought, your school of thought, your perspectives, your deep thinking, and your creativity, and such. So, I think earlier on, and this is probably the case with any new form of technology, people were thinking that AI was cheating, helping you plagiarize school assignments, work assignments, whatever the case may have been. But I think with more education out there, I have recently came across a Instagram reel from Sinai Bovell, who's a futurist and an AI and tech enthusiast. She had said, well, it's really about deepening your thoughts compared to where your thought process was previously. People are also have privacy concerns and everything like that, but honestly, if anybody knows cybersecurity like I do, because I've studied cybersecurity and even worked in spaces where that's kind of top issue, you already are giving away your personal info.
Anyway.
So people have this thing that, oh, AI is going to take my info and everything. Well, you were giving away info 5 years ago, 10 years ago, pretty much anytime you open up your laptop or turn on your computer or went on social media. So, people like to think that we could be in a non-Big Brother or in a space where we're not tracked. Reality is people want to find you. They can find you. That's always been the case, even as I referenced earlier, the 90s. So these technologies have always existed in some form or not. It just has evolved. So AI has been around for really 40 years and such, and it's obviously been around for over 50, almost 60 probably, at least some form of the technology. So it's not like we're living in the first half of the 20th century,
Right.
and people need to understand that. I mean, I'm not saying put everything out there, throw your social security card, your driver's license, like on social media, but if
But
you're using,
your digital presence is something that is fairly relinquished just by participating. So at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. I do want to ask you a couple of additional questions before we kind of move to the conclusion of our conversation. So one thing I just definitely want to ask you is about the fact, okay, so you had the opportunity to work on President Obama's campaigns, and is there a particular moment that really stood out that was quite memorable or pivotal? I mean, I know you've shared your journey of how you kind of moved into that space, but while you were on that campaign, like, where was it that you were so incredibly taken by the experience and the observation that you felt like this is definitely going to leave a mark on me forever?
well, again, I don't really give there's never really just one thing. It's really an accumulation of a series of events. But I knew when I would say that I was willing to work 10, 12 hours a day, eat pizza, eat junk food to sustain myself, to make this vision in an altruistic manner happen, meaning him getting elected, which obviously subsequently he did. That's how I knew I was in this. And that really just kind of just made me want to, even if someone wants to argue it's naively, but at least at that time I still had the innocence that we all can make a difference in the change in our communities and all. At least in that particular moment in time as a 20-year-old
Mm.
young man, and such. Whether that was taking arranging rides for the elderly or those who were transportation challenged to get rides to polls and votes or early votes. There's a lot of concepts I didn't understand at that particular moment, but just seeing that groundswell of what can happen when people really put their collective minds together, it felt like a civil rights movement to me in the modern day at that particular time. So that's really what changed my perspective into what I want to do going forward, just one way
Mhm.
or another. Now, obviously, that has metastasized into other forms.
Right.
Each campaign I subsequently worked on in whatever capacity it was in, but it made me more engaged politically or civically. But so it's now to the point I look at it now, political campaigning as a business. So I don't really necessarily see it from those green, naive baby lenses, if
Mm.
you want to call it for
So
better
you have
or
a better
for
sense
worse.
of it. Right.
Because of the world we're living in, it's just I have to almost approach it now from a business mindset.
Right.
And it's necessarily that I want it to be that way, but it has to be that way.
Yes. I was going to say that really kind of brings me to my next question because, these strategies of engaging and mobilizing communities, that is such a pivotal question. I mean, what you saw that happened during the Obama campaign, how does that transfer into what we've seen in some of the more recent campaigns? And how does that apply to still being able to engage people in a digital age? What are some of the strategies that you found that were successful or were successful during the Obama administration that needed to evolve as we look at other campaigns?
Well, yeah, it's definitely changed and such. I will say that now you don't really see free volunteering as much as you used to. Now you see more incentive-based volunteering, meaning that people get paid for volunteering, whereas before people would be willing to knock on doors, make phone calls, phone bank, and it still happens, but
And
you don't see.
is that incentive based volunteering? Does that come out of the request that citizens get to contribute to a campaign? Is that what really funds the ability to do that incentive base?
Well, what really funds it is it's donors, it's what's in the campaign war chest budget. So yeah, if you had a budget to drop campaign literature or to operate your field projects, your field operations, then you would just have to include, basically paying volunteers, which is an oxymoron in itself to be included in that mix. So it's just all about the restructuring, but the funding has always been from individual donors, high donors, and such. There's still, especially if it's a political campaign, you still have, depending on what type of campaign, you still have the funding mechanisms that you would have from individual donors or PAC donors, political action committee donors, and all. And what the campaign does, that's really up to them as long as they're following campaign finance laws and such. But I think the answer to this maybe a little more to what I think where you were going is, are they basing off of how people feel? For sure. If you're seeing low volunteering or even low voter turnout based upon data or and such, one has to make a change. And in this world now, you really can't get people to work for free or even intern for free. Even campaign interns get paid now. And there's different campaign structures. There's the political campaign. There's also, that's for the candidate committee. There's also one called an independent expenditure, which is a group that funds a particular type of candidate without endorsing a candidate. You have advocacy groups who basically work more on a particular issue as opposed to a candidate because of laws and other ethics that are involved with that. And obviously advocacy groups have a much different type of options of getting funding because they can receive grants and whatnot. And obviously you have corporate PACs, which are basically funded by the corporations that they're a part of. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons why, people now, and not to mention, let's just be real, the economy is a huge aspect of it. I mean, more so now than ever, and people want to they want to have something in it for them other than just, well, somebody's going to get elected, or
Right.
it's more advocacy based. We'll make sure that the dolphins and whales get saved.
Right.
So,
Interesting. So I wanted to get your thoughts. It's kind of interesting, as you've kind of referenced previously, about some of the most recent executive orders around diversity, equity, and inclusion. But how do you feel that that is now going to evolve in the work that you do from a consulting perspective or from a PR perspective? Given that a number of large companies have really pulled back on their DEI efforts, but now with a sweeping executive order that will, for the most part, disband it through, various governmental agencies. How do you see that really affecting, or how is that going to evolve or not evolve DEI within the world of political consulting and public relations?
it's not really gonna affect my practices and such. The only thing it's gonna really affect is just how I message out to different groups or different individuals, and all. If it's a more of a boutique agency, like the ones that have hundreds, thousands of employees, which you do have across the country and the world, you will probably see that more reflective there, if depending on, if especially if it's a corporate structured PR or political consulting firm. But we will probably see less of it in a political consulting firm, more so because most of the time, most political consulting firms are kind of ideological based to begin with. So if you didn't have really diverse people to begin with, you're not going to have them now. And if you had a diverse group of people on staff, then you probably will continue to do so. And you probably never had a need for DEI too much. I mean, definitely you still do have prejudices, even in very culturally aware, or for lack of better words, left-leaning consulting groups. I've certainly have been target of those. You'll see mostly a whole large white consulting staff, but yet be the first to say that they're diverse in nature and they're diverse in ideas. Everything's diverse except the staff. But we fight for your issues. Well, I mean, yeah, but everybody's white in the staff files on the website. So that's something that used to not really bother me before, but now I don't really fool with interact with a lot of those places and spaces, nor do I even want to try and infiltrate,
Right.
especially if I can create my own,
Right.
which I have done. But on a corporate structure, yeah, like for Edelman, that's a big PR firm. The PR firms definitely I definitely believe you'll see some rollbacks, especially if they're nonpartisan or at least non-ideological on a larger scale. So you'll definitely see that there. But I'm one person who believes that DEI was more dog and pony show theatrics than anything else. That's not to say I don't believe in it, but I believe that there were those who benefit off of it and those who should have gotten benefit off of it. That like DEI has never benefited me. I'll be first to say that. I mean, if DEI benefited me, I wouldn't need to sue the strategies.
Right.
That's just the God's truth. To be honest about that, it's not to say that I think we shouldn't have it, but if you're going to have something in place, I mean, at least make it work for everybody instead of a select few. I'll just be blunt and just say that it benefited some Black folks, but not all Black folks.
Right. And I know that particular sentiment was shared, quite a bit during the period that, followed the death of George Floyd. So I think you're definitely, speaking to some real insights. And we'll all, I guess, continue to monitor how things continue to evolve. With a new administration, change is something that we all have to anticipate. And this particular subject, although we speak of it from a very isolated moment in time, I think even by the time we air your podcast, we'll probably have a whole new set of interpretations that come out of that. But kind of moving to the conclusion of our conversation, our podcast is all about something to say, and you've certainly shared some great insights. So, Clay, I want to thank you for that. But the podcast is entitled Something to Say. So as we kind of draw it to a close, what do you have to say?
Yeah, what I have to say is that every voice matters. In a world filled with noise, it's easy to feel drowned out or insignificant, but each of us has the power to influence change in our own way. By sharing our stories, listening to others, and engaging with empathy, we can build bridges and foster understanding. I encourage everyone to embrace their unique perspectives and step into conversations with openness and courage. Therefore, let's use our platforms, big or small, to uplift one another and work towards a more connected and compassionate society.
That's a very powerful statement. I've heard a lot in terms of how we are able to make stronger connections within our communities. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your passion and your insights. Your words are very informative. You've given us a very good cross-section, not just of you as a person, but also you as a business professional and how you are able to influence various strategies. So thank you once again. It's been a pleasure having you on our show today.
Thank you, Greg. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my journey and thoughts with your listeners.
So, listeners, that's a wrap for this episode of Something to Say. We encourage you to stay connected to us to hear more inspiring conversations from the voices of diverse individuals, sharing their background as well as their passion. So, until next time, this has been Greg DeSouza.
Thank you for tuning in to Something to Say. We trust you found some valuable insights and takeaways that can help you find your passion. Don't miss out on future episodes. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred platform. We value your feedback and suggestions, so let us know how we can serve you better. Keep the conversation going and stay inspired until we meet again. Take care and happy listening.